And so welcome again to this webinar for helping SNAP households gain self-sufficiency through employment and training. As VISTA members, you have a unique role in bringing communities out of poverty rather than making the status quo more tolerable. So the USDA's Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program also acts as valuable work support for many Americans. SNAP offers employment and training programs in addition to the SNAP benefits you might be more familiar with. And these employment and training programs are designed to help individuals gain employment and increase earnings. I'm your host today, Mark Wilson. I work with the VISTA Program and Impact Unit. Assisting me today are Suzanne Knisner and Rebecca Starr, our partners at Campaign Consultation. You'll see us in the chat and in the Q&A to assist you during today's session and to help you get your questions answered. We will also be hearing from Jackie Winfelt at the USDA Food and Nutrition Service, as well as Ella Fowler from the New York City Coalition Against Hunger, and from Joshua with the Ohio Association of Second Harvest Food Banks. So we're going to hear in a little bit from Jackie Winfelt, who works for SNAP at the Food and Nutrition Service at the USDA. She's a subject matter expert on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and its interconnection with SNAP Employment and Training Assistance. Ella Fowler is the Associate Director of the Anti-Hunger and Opportunity Corps, which is VISTA's largest multi-state anti-hunger program. She will speak about how SNAP and SNAP ENT programs may factor into your existing work and assignment. Finally, we will speak with Joshua Logsdon, who was a VISTA with the Ohio Association of Food Banks, which is a landmark program, and they've done a lot of amazing work in providing benefit banks, and benefit banks help underserved individuals and families overcome hunger and gain self-sufficiency. During the presentation, if you have questions, again, you can type them in the Q&A box for Adobe Connect, and we will answer them at the end. Before we get into the meat of the presentation, you might be wondering, where do you fit in, and how do all of the pieces fit together? So we're going to talk broadly about several different types of organizations that may exist in your state. What the picture looks like depends both on how your state is set up and what the goals are of the community organizations that you're placed at as a VISTA member. So the USDA is the federal agency that oversees the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP. They also oversee SNAP Employment and Training. They report to Congress, and ultimately they also report to the President. State agencies administering SNAP are a different type of agency. So state agencies administering SNAP are state agencies, and in a couple rare cases, Indian tribes that receive SNAP and SNAP ENT funding. So these state agencies administering SNAP are responsible for administering benefits to households. Often this is the State Office of Health and Human Services, and then state agencies report to the governor of the state, or in the case of tribal organizations, to the tribal leaders. State workforce agencies are also state-run agencies, and they administer unemployment benefits. They also help people become employed. State workforce agencies are often partners in SNAP ENT, not in every state, but in most of them. And then where you fit in are the nonprofit organizations, local organizations that work in coordination with the USDA and state agencies in order to help connect households experiencing hunger with nutrition resources, and then the local organizations that help to connect unemployed individuals to employment assistance. So most of you are placed in nonprofit and community organizations, which means that you're in a really great position to help enhance the connections between your organization and all the other 4 types of organizations and potential partners. So I'm going to turn the presentation over now to Jackie Winfelt with the USDA Food and Nutrition Service. So take it away, Jackie.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone for taking the time to be on this webinar today. I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about the SNAP Employment and Training Program. As many of you know, SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, is the cornerstone of the nation's nutrition safety net. It helps over 46 million Americans every month put food on their table. It's also an important working support for working families. In fact, 42% of SNAP participants live in households with earned income. The majority of SNAP participants who are able to work do so. More than half of SNAP participants are children, elderly, or disabled and are exempt from work requirements. Among SNAP households with at least one working-age, non-disabled adult, more than half worked while receiving SNAP, and more than 80% worked in the year prior or the year after receiving SNAP. The rates are even higher for families with children. More than 60% work while receiving SNAP, and almost 90% work in the year before or after receiving SNAP. The number of SNAP households that have earnings while participating in SNAP has risen for more than a decade, more than tripling from 2 million in the year 2000 to about 6.9 million in 2012. SNAP benefits help supplement family food budgets while household members look for work or seek out higher-paying jobs. SNAP takes into account the expenses of working households when calculating benefits. These expenses might include work-related expenses like childcare. Low-income households, including those who are receiving SNAP benefits, may also be eligible for the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit. Combined, these working-related deductions and tax credits help serve as a work incentive for SNAP households. SNAP households are financially better off if they are able to secure employment and increase their earnings. This chart shows the financial gain for a working household with 3 members, using the average deduction amount for dependent care and the excess shelter deduction. The calculation is based on 2012 income, so it's a bit dated. In 2012, $2,008 was the maximum allowable gross income for a family of 3 in 1 month. For every dollar earned, SNAP benefits decline 24 to 36 cents, but families receiving SNAP have a strong incentive to work longer hours or seek higher paying jobs. The takeaway from this chart is that households gain greater purchasing power as income increases, and SNAP benefits are a supplement to that income. While most SNAP participants who can do work, there are unemployed or underemployed SNAP participants who need help putting food on the table. State SNAP agencies offer employment and training, or as we call it, E&T programs, to help these participants gain skills, training, and experience to help participants obtain and retain jobs that lead to self-sufficiency. SNAP E&T programs vary widely by state and cover a range of activities that prepare participants for or connect them to work. Some states integrate SNAP employment and training programs into the statewide workforce development system and use service centers like the American Job Centers or one-stops to provide services. Other states operate SNAP employment and training programs outside of this system. SNAP E&T also varies from very small programs with minimal services to more robust programs that have comprehensive services, and we'll get into a little bit of that later. As the economy continues to improve, states have an opportunity to enhance and expand SNAP employment and training programs in order to help SNAP participants get good jobs. To maximize federal and state resources, USDA and states are looking at areas where SNAP E&T programs can complement other workforce programs by providing career pathways for a variety of adults, including those who are work-ready, those who need retraining, and those who need basic education before they can compete in the job market. Some SNAP participants are required to register for work and participate in the SNAP E&T program. States may also serve SNAP participants who self-initiate participation in E&T as funding permits. Now to the good stuff, the purpose of the E&T program. The purpose of the E&T program comes from Congress through the Food and Nutrition Act. It is to assist members of SNAP households in gaining skills, training, work, or experience that will increase their ability to obtain regular employment. USDA is responsible for overseeing the SNAP employment and training program. We allocate funds for SNAP E&T, review and approve state plans, offer technical assistance, and ensure that state and local agencies are in compliance with the statutory and regulatory requirements for the program. We have 7 regional offices with staff that visit state and local programs on a routine basis to review program operations and to offer assistance. At the state level, state SNAP agencies are responsible for planning, implementing, and operating E&P programs. States determine what services will be offered, where these services will be offered, and what the participation requirements are for SNAP recipients who must participate in E&P as a condition of eligibility for SNAP. Local entities provide E&P services. Providers might consist of local human service offices, one-stops, community colleges, nonprofit organizations, and sometimes even private companies or businesses. The key is that these E&P providers are included in the state's employment and training plan and that they have a contract or an MOU with the state in order to receive federal funding for services. All states are required to administer a SNAP E&P program, but they have a great deal of flexibility to design one that best suits the needs of their population and economic conditions. So states can decide where they operate a program, and some states offer statewide programs while others operate in just a few counties. States also decide who they offer services to. Some require all work registrants or the majority of work registrants to participate, while others exempt certain categories like the homeless or the hard to employ, and still others serve only those who volunteer or self-initiate participation in an employment and training program. States also decide who they partner with or contract with. I'll cover the funding for SNAP E&T in a few minutes, but it's important to point out that SNAP has a federal grant as well as a 50% federal reimbursement. The states are able to leverage state and local funding in providing allowable activities and services. So states can choose from a number of activities to offer as part of their SNAP E&T program. Job search and job search training might include life skills courses, resume writing, and interview preparation. Workfare and or work experience require the participant to work the equivalent of his or her benefits divided by minimum wage. So the participant isn't paid, but working off his or her benefits. For a one-person household, this would be about 27 hours of work per month. That's $200 in benefits divided by the federal minimum wage of $7.25. Educational activities might include adult basic education, literacy training, English as a second language, or vocational and technical training. States may also provide self-employment training or training opportunities funded under the Workforce Investment Act. Finally, states may also provide job retention services for those who participate in an employment and training activity and then get a job. Job retention might include case management, assistance with transportation, uniforms, manuals, or dependent care for up to 90 days. The states must provide participant reimbursements to both mandatory and voluntary participants. Allowable participant reimbursements are expenses that are reasonably necessary and directly related to participation in an E&T activity. So this might include transportation, books, course or test fees, and dependent care. For example, if an individual was participating in job search but needed to take a bus in order to get to the office, the state would provide a bus pass so that the individual could complete her training. USDA does not place limits on how much a state may spend on participant reimbursements. However, states may set their own limits, like a $50 per week cap on transportation reimbursements. If a participant's expenses exceed what the state will reimburse, he or she cannot be required to participate in that employment and training activity. USDA funds SNAP E&T through 3 separate funding streams. The E&T program grants are sometimes called 100% grants. Able-bodied adults without dependents, or ABODs, have a separate grant for states that are that offer to provide a qualifying work activity to all ABODs subject to the time limit. And finally, there's a 50% reimbursement grant for state or local funding that's spent on SNAP E&T exceeding the 100% grant or the ABOD grant. So a little bit more information on the funding. The E&T program grant is about $90 million that's allocated to states on an annual basis. USDA allocates this based on the number of work-eligible SNAP participants in each state. All 53 state agencies, including the 50 states, the District of Columbia, Guam, and the Virgin Islands, receive a share of the $90 million grant. The ABOD grant is $20 million, and it's only allocated to states that make an additional commitment to serve at-risk ABOD. This past year, in fiscal year 2014, only 6 states made that pledge: Colorado, Delaware, New York, South Dakota, Texas, and Utah. The 50% reimbursement is based on what states spend beyond the E&T and the ABOD grant. USDA also reimburses states for spending on participant reimbursements, which I mentioned earlier, like transportation and dependent care. The E&T grant and ABOD grant funding cannot be spent on these participant reimbursements. That's only 50-50 money. In order to use federal funding, all activities and services must be included in an approved state E&T plan. So the next slide gives you guys an idea of the breakdown between federal and state spending on SNAP E&T programs in 2013. USDA spent about $287 million, while states spent about $189 million, for a combined total of over $476 million. USDA hopes that VISTAs are able to support SNAP E&T in a number of ways. While VISTAs have worked to increase access to SNAP benefits and then building capacity in employment and training programs, this is the first time we've made SNAP E&T a priority. This is an opportunity to work with state agencies to increase SNAP participants' ability to obtain and retain employment, to promote the SNAP E&T program, and to connect low-income households with critical work support services. A lot of you on the call are part of the Anti-Hunger or Opportunity Corps. USDA and CNCF partnership outlines 5 areas: community engagement, volunteer training, and outreach development, fund development, anti-poverty and self-sufficiency initiatives, and SNAP employment and training. So we'll stop here and invite you guys to comment on what type of employment and training programs have you had contact with and or worked with as a VISTA. You're welcome to enter comments into the chat. And it's great, I'm seeing some comments in here. Construction and culinary training, job search, log, yep, Michigan Works. So it looks like there's actually quite a bit of experience with job assistance or training programs, and a lot with technical training. I think culinary training is one that we often see, especially in some of the DC Kitchen, connecting homeless people to employment opportunities. This is great. It looks like there's a lot of resources and a lot of knowledge out there. Wow, this is really a fantastic, overwhelming response. The scope of possibilities is obviously very broad here, and many of you are already doing work where you could help increase the capacity of your host organization, understanding SNAP work requirements and SNAP E&T options. I think some other possibilities are explaining the benefits of SNAP E&T and the benefits of work to clients by developing messaging and education materials, and even helping to strengthen connections to services and supports that expand what SNAP E&T provides. So I want to talk about one example of the many different types of employment and training programs out there. Washington State's E&T program has been closely studied and reviewed by USDA, workforce experts, and other state agencies. Starting in 2005, Washington revamped what was a very small program focused in one area of the state and offering very limited services to one of the more robust, innovative SNAP E&T programs. Washington SNAP E&T program started as a pilot in the Seattle area with some foundation funding, helping to catalyze a partnership between governmental, educational, and private organizations. These organizations, the core organizations of the state, one community college, and 5 community-based organizations, were involved in extreme collaborative efforts in designing and operating the pilot. So from the very beginning, there was a strong commitment from all the partners involved. Over 9 years, it has grown into a statewide program that includes all of Washington's community and technical community colleges and many community-based organizations. It now has a budget of over $30 million annually that it's putting into these employment and training services. So here are the nuts and bolts of Washington's employment and training program. The state agency works closely with community colleges that provide short-term vocational and technical training for jobs that are available and in demand locally, as well as adult basic education, GED training, and English as a second language courses. Community-based partners work with the state agency and community colleges to provide supportive services, such as case management and career navigation, as well as job search training and job retention services after participants obtain jobs. Washington has determined that students receiving the services from both community colleges and partner CBOs tend to have better outcomes in program completion and employment than those who receive just one or the other type of service. Policymakers in states are excited about Washington's employment and training program because of its promising outcomes. And you'll be able to search for a lot of information that's been published and written about Washington by looking at the state's name. It's Basic Food Employment and Training, or BFET. An estimated 56,800 people have been served by the program since 2005. At 1 year, the entered employment rate is 58%, with a median wage of $10.66. The median wage for those who are receiving vocational education is slightly higher at $11.44 an hour. At 2 years, the entered employment rate is up to 69%. A 2013 study of Washington's E&T program found that staff E&T participants were 42% more likely to keep employment than a similar group who received SNAP alone without the employment and training services. Washington's outcome measures have proved critical not only by measuring improvement and helping states make funding and investment decisions, but also by generating interest and support for SNAP E&T programs outside of the state. Here are some resources that you can use to find more information about SNAP employment and training in your state. The Food and Nutrition Service E&T Resource Center provides links to state employment and training programs as well as other federal training resources. Note that not all states have information about their SNAP E&T services online, but USDA or the state agency can provide the state's E&T plan. And here are some additional resources that you'll find on the E&T Resource Center. There's the E&T Plan Handbook, which outlines the requirements and contents of the state employment and training plan. This is for SNAP employment and training. The E&T Toolkit provides information on SNAP work requirements, E&T program options, and provides answers to frequently asked questions. So with that, I will hand this back over to Mark and Ella.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for sharing your expertise with us. So I think probably the next question that might be on your mind is, how can all of this information fit into your day-to-day work? So for that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Ella Fowler so that she can give us some ideas. Ella?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So in this section, we will discuss how you can highlight the SNAP Employment and Training Program in your work, like Mark said. Most of these activities can supplement what you are already doing. So as Vista members, you have committed to build up your organizations to have better capacity to tackle poverty. Before we get into the details, let's work backwards from what we want things to look like. One, we want more households to be able to afford healthy food on their own. But before that, we want your organizations to have more capacity to help more people and to help more people and to help them more effectively. So employment, what does success look like? So CNCS measures the success of employment programs in several ways. For instance, CNCS wants to increase the number of individuals receiving training and skill development. They want to increase the number of individuals receiving job placement services. And finally, CNCS wants to see that your organizations have greater capacity to help people get more jobs, or to get jobs, I should say. So what does success look like in hunger? SNAP is often considered work support because you can't look for a job or be successful in a job if you're hungry. CNCS has several measures for determining the success of anti-hunger programs. For instance, increasing the number of individuals receiving food support, increasing the number of individuals receiving support services, and increasing the number of individuals that reported increased household food security. Those last two bullet points are where things get interesting. This is the idea that vistas are meant to increase the number of households that aren't hungry by any means possible. Curing hunger by providing holistic support services. That is where the overlap between hunger and employment really exists. Feeding families helps them to be strong enough to become self-sufficient. Improving employment helps families stay that way. So how do you kind of work SNAP employment and training into your current work? Taking this webinar is really the first step towards understanding the SNAP ENT program. Take some time to research SNAP ENT in your state and to better understand how you can fit SNAP ENT into your existing work. As Jackie said before, each state approaches SNAP ENT differently and have their own individual plans. Information on SNAP and SNAP employment and training is generally available on state health and human service websites. And one way to find more information is to run an internet search for your state in the word SNAP employment and training. Another way is to really contact your state agency that already administers SNAP, and they may be able to provide you with the state plan regarding SNAP employment and training program. The second thing is to plan how you can incorporate this into your work. Talk to your organizations and supervisors to see where you can implement and add this work to your already existing activities. And then obviously the last is to implement your plan and create documentation so that the work is sustainable or can be carried on by future vistas. If you work in an employment agency or an organization that works with SNAP households, you can draft a few outreach materials on SNAP employment and training and place them throughout your building and or organization. Use those same flyers to inform the community of the SNAP ENT program. If there is an area of your community already known to be food insecure or has a high percentage of SNAP clients, use those same flyers to promote the program. Reach out to current SNAP recipients and participants who could voluntarily join the SNAP ENT program. You can do this through clients your organization already serves or by reaching out to organizations who serve SNAP clients and providing them with informational materials. Also, when you're in the community for other reasons, like meetings with partners, awareness events, volunteer recruitment events, bring some of these flyers with you. This is a new program, as Jackie kind of talked about, and many people are not aware of it or they're confused by it. And the first part of all of this is really raising awareness about the SNAP ENT program. Also, let your partners know. At your next task force meeting or training or just general partnership meeting, make an announcement about the SNAP employment and training program. And have flyers or your state's SNAP employment and training program information to share. Also, make sure you have the necessary knowledge to direct any questions asked towards the appropriate state agency or be able to answer them yourself. Another thing is you can work with your already existing volunteers and or recruit new volunteers. So if you are already recruiting and training volunteers to do employment services and or SNAP application and pre-screening assistance, inform them of the SNAP employment and training program and how it works in your state. When you're out in the community, they can address the program to interested clients and direct them to the appropriate state agency. Also, you can train volunteers to train other organizations and or partners on the SNAP employment and training program, similar to the Train the Trainer program. By just informing volunteers of the SNAP ENT program and its benefits, they can help spread awareness by word of mouth or to other community members. Again, this is a new program and most of the general population is unaware of its existence. Another thing that you can do is you can identify barriers to access. We all know there are barriers to accessing the SNAP program for many Americans, but you can also work on the SNAP ENT program by identifying those same barriers to access. So what is going on in your state specifically, and how can I and my organization address these barriers? Asking these questions will allow you to create a better plan to address the needs of your community, your organization's clients, and or your community. Furthermore, you can conduct a community assessment to research why the community may not be engaging in SNAP employment and training and or other FNS nutritional programs or your organizational programs. There's a big picture to connect employment services and hunger services. We know that hunger is a risk for unemployment and unemployment is a risk for hunger, but we can break the cycle. The opportunity we have is to build upon the connections between these two types of work that used to be considered very different, to break down silos in order to help households form two different angles instead of just with the employment or just with hunger. We also have the opportunity to ensure that struggling households are connected to all of the help that they need as soon as they have a contact with one type of help or the other. So connecting to your specific assignment. We all saw at the pre-service orientation that every VISTA has a unique and specific VISTA assignment description, or VAD. You and your supervisor and your project are also able to adapt to your community's needs and to changing opportunities such as those in the 2014 Farm Bill. What we know is that VISTAs who are working in hunger or employment tend to have a few areas and types of work that they do. I will share a few common ones and ideas for activities, and we'll talk about how to fit these into USDA SNAP E&T models that Jackie discussed earlier. Here are some general steps to get started. First, speak with your supervisor to make sure that you're not stepping on any toes and to see how you can address new opportunities. You can also ask to see the application for assistance that guides your entire VISTA project to see how your work fits in with other VISTAs. You will consider who are your existing partners and how do state agencies that administer SNAP and state workforce agencies fit into them. If your year involves partnerships, a lot of you are building partnerships in your local area, whether that's with partner agencies, community centers, what have you. Consider a few ideas. You can create partnerships between with hunger agencies, workforce agencies, and state agencies administering SNAP. You can convene local leaders to create anti-hunger plans that address SNAP and SNAP E&T, as I spoke of earlier, what we call benefit access plans. You can build partnerships with potential employers to help them recruit from your specific community. If your year involves staff development, consider, a lot of you are probably creating staff resources and trainings and materials. You can consider developing trainings for staff in order for them to better understand changing SNAP and SNAP E&T requirements, so that your staff in turn can better support the community. In general, you can help your organization understand changing SNAP requirements specific to your state. If your year involves program development, community organizations can help job seekers by supplementing the job search requirements and resume editing assistance that are often provided by state agencies. For example, developing employment programming that can enhance existing efforts, workforce training such as computer or vocational skills. Also basic work skills classes, for instance, soft skills such as etiquette, working with a supervisor, working with a team, and arriving consistently are easily taken for granted. Combined with partnership development, you could provide matchmaking between employers and job seekers. If your year involves community services, consider putting together a professional clothing closet, writing scripts, and training volunteers to run mock interviews. You could work with partners to review the effectiveness of other employment assistance in your state or expanding it to new localities. If your year is revolved around resource development, you can consider bringing in new grants or new money to hire career counselors. You could create a benefit access plan to better address resources within your community. You may be able to fundraise for employment support programming. You can look into getting in-kind donations from local grocery stores or other businesses. And finally, you can learn about the relationships between nonprofits, state agencies administering SNAP, state workforce agencies, and help to foster those connections and not have to reinvent the wheel.
Thank you so much, Ella, for giving us a big picture look at the small things that we can do to help make sure that families are more self-sufficient and also connected to hunger resources. So I know many of you are first-year VISTAs. We also know there are some second and third and maybe even others out there. But we wanted to give you an idea of what is possible. What is possible with combining employment and combining hunger programming. So a really amazing example of that is the Ohio Association of Food Banks. And they specifically have worked in building up what's called the Ohio Benefit Bank. And so benefit banks are internet-based counselor-assisted services that connect low and moderate income families to things like tax credits, to SNAP, to employment and work supports. That is to say, combining all types of resources that help families stay fed and help families make ends meet. So looking at this amazing map right here, in 2006, that map on the left, that was before they had any vistas at all at the Ohio Association of Food Banks. So in 2006, the Ohio Benefit Bank had engaged 2 volunteers as counselors, and they assisted 104 individuals with benefit applications in 2 counties in Ohio. Then as a result of VISTA capacity building, after 1 year, you can see how many counties they were in that middle map. And then after 5 years of VISTAs working to expand the Ohio Benefit Bank, they've been able to almost exponentially expand their reach. So after 5 years, over 1,300 Ohio Benefit Bank sites have been developed that reach into every single county in Ohio. And I think that's just something to think about because I know you can get caught in the moment as a VISTA, but thinking about what your neighborhood, what your organization is going to look like 5 years after your VISTA service. I know looking back at my VISTA service after 5 years, I've seen amazing things. So I think you're going to see amazing things too. And with that, I want to introduce Josh Logsden. He was a VISTA with the Ohio Benefit Bank Project, and he's going to tell us more about the project. Take it away, Josh.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? My name is Joshua Logsden. I am a former VISTA, actually just graduated from the program about a month ago. And I was a 2013 graduate of the College of William and Mary in Virginia, where I'm currently living, although I spent the last year in Columbus, Ohio. I moved to Columbus, Ohio to serve with the Ohio Association of Food Banks on their work experience program. I'm excited to serve as a VISTA, not just because it's a nationally recognized service program, but its focus on capacity building appealed to me and played to my strengths in business and communication, which is what I majored in college. Working as a VISTA also gave me the freedom to see the program I was working on from a wide-angle perspective. Many times working in the day-to-day grind of social and service organizations, people lose sight of the long-term goals and instead favor getting the short-term things done. So mission drift, is a common problem as agencies take on more and more responsibilities outside of their expertise. They also tend to lose a long-term vision while running around plugging every leak and hole while deeper cracks and problems form for the future, which they're just not thinking about because they're stuck in the day-to-day. But to tell you a little bit about the program I specifically worked on, I was not involved with the benefit bank side, as he mentioned, although that map is pretty impressive, and VISTA's played a huge part in kind of building that out. But I worked on the work experience program, combining a short-term goal, which was to keep Columbus, Ohio, Franklin County residents on their SNAP benefits, but also had a focus on the long term, which was we were trying to, get them work ready and find them employment. So the Work Experience Program, WEP for short, W-E-P, administered by the Ohio Association of Food Banks, was done on behalf of Job and Family Services of Franklin County, which is one of the state administrators of the SNAP program, like I believe someone mentioned earlier. We've served approximately 2,800 clients since its inception this year in 2014. WEP is a multi-action program designed to address the root issues of poverty and hunger as they relate to employment, while at the same time ensuring that 100% of Franklin County residents have at least the opportunity to maintain their SNAP benefits regardless of employment status. Kind of the main problem or the main issue that we were working with is due to a recent law change in Ohio or in Franklin County, people that were unemployed trying to receive SNAP benefits could only receive SNAP benefits for 3 months out of 2 years, I believe. And then after that, they either had to find employment for 20 hours a week or fulfill the requirement in another way. The way that we kind of came in was people were allowed to fulfill 24 hours a month of volunteer service at an approved nonprofit or religious organization. And so what we did was we connected to local agencies to find volunteer placements for people where they could work, whether it was in a food pantry or office setting or really anything. And by completing those hours, they'd not only receive their food stamps, but they'd also hopefully, maybe connect with some people, touch up on their work skills. A lot of people hadn't been employed in a long time because we were working with the ABOD population, able-bodied adults without dependents. So a lot of these people have been unemployed for a very long time. The program also offers a comprehensive array of workforce development services. So along with getting people to volunteer, we also set up some things to help people touch up on their resumes, meet with employers, different things like that, go through a class where they can learn, how to do an interview and stuff like that. And this was created in partnership with a host of Franklin County organizations to overcome barriers and prepare its clients for reentry into the workforce. So in the long term, WEP is focused on decreasing unemployment among the ABOD population, which is estimated to be about 12,000 people in Franklin County alone. That's one of about 50 counties in Ohio. And we're focused on breaking the systematic cycles of poverty and hunger, ensuring the future of its clients and their families by opening the door to sustainable and self-sufficient employment. So in planning and setting up the program, we actually made use of many USDA materials that were published specifically for the ABOD population and specifically for ABOD development, like the ENT stuff we've been talking about. That stuff is an amazing resource, and you can just Google it, ENT Ohio, and it'll it's like the first thing that shows up. So that really was a lot of the groundwork for what we did, and we were also chosen as an organization to be audited by the FNS Food and Nutrition Services team when they came through, and they audited the WEP program along with their audit of Job and Family Services, which was the SNAP distributor. So specifically for me, I worked on a small team of 3 employees at the Ohio Association of Food Banks that helped to implement this program. I started with recruiting sites for clients to volunteer, so a lot of calling around to different organizations saying, hey, would you like some volunteers, and here are kind of the requirements. And then eventually, after we built a pretty solid base, I moved into a training role when we brought 15 employees on to kind of do what I'd been doing before, and I trained them. So I was also involved in the creation of the largest monthly workforce development clinic in the state of Ohio. We were serving about 600 to 800 clients every month for 3 days a month. And we would use each of these 3 days as an opportunity to kind of draw in different community organizations that were focused on workforce development. Because the Ohio Association of Food Banks, we do food stuff well. We know the food networks, we know where people can get food, we know about SNAP, but we don't know as much about employment and workforce development. So we pulled in a lot of other people that their expertise was in that already to kind of come alongside of us and help us figure this stuff out. And so most recently, actually, after I finished VISTA, I've been spending the last month and a half conducting a comprehensive survey of the roughly 1,500 clients who have gone through the program, either successfully or unsuccessfully completing it. And I'm writing up a report actually right now about giving some recommendations for how the program can be improved for the next contract year. So just to wrap everything up, I would like to say I'm proud to be a part of this program, and I've already seen its success in a 1 in 4 employment rate. 1 out of 4 people involved in our program get a job by the end of it. And I know that by continuously improving the program, we can help combat both the hunger and employment issues in Central Ohio, because the two are so often connected to each other. So that's it for me. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Josh. It was really great to hear about your experience. And now it's time for us to hear some of your questions out there in the audience. So you can ask a question using the Q&A section of Adobe Connect, which is located in the bottom right corner of your screen.
Hi, Mark. This is Suzanne. I have a couple of different questions. I think this first one is for Jackie, and it is, what do you mean by the hard to employ?
So by that, it's not a specific category or a hard definition. Just in general, some SNAP participants have a lot of barriers to employment, like limited education. We know that of those who have been long-term unemployed and are receiving SNAP benefits, about half of them don't have more than an 8th grade education level. So there's educational barriers. There are also child care related barriers, like not having anyone to look after your kids, or if one of your children is sick, no one to take care of them if they're not able to go to school. There are various challenges that confront part of the SNAP population versus those who have resources to take care of those issues, have recent work experience, have higher education, and don't need as much help getting back into the workforce.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jackie. So our next question is, what is considered a disadvantaged individual? Please define.
This is Mark. I think that's pretty similar to the last question. It's kind of a big way to talk about groups of people, but a disadvantaged individual could be someone with a disability, or it could be someone with a barrier to employment, or with a criminal history. In VISTA, we kind of have a few terms that we kick around when we talk about the types of work that VISTAs do, because all of you are doing work that is specifically addressing poverty in your communities and addressing mostly people who live below the poverty line or who are at risk of going below the poverty line.
Great. Thank you for clarifying and expanding. Our next question is from Jessica. Any suggestions on how to find information on conducting a community assessment?
Jessica, this is Ella. That's an excellent question. I would see if anybody in your community partner organizations or your own organization has gone about conducting a community assessment. I would also reach out to your fellow VISTAs, either through Vista Campus or through your Vista project, to see if anybody has done a community assessment. And then lastly, if you yourself are unfamiliar with, what a community assessment is, or how to go about doing it, and so on and so forth, just do some research online just to see about various ways that you can go about doing a community assessment. There are a lot of different ways to approach something like that. It's kind of a big project, so depending on what you're looking for, you're going to have to define those types of things first and then approach it that way.
Thank you, Ella. I believe this next question is for Jackie. Nancy asked that several people have questioned about undocumented adult immigrants and the U.S. and their U.S. citizen kids. The adults cannot receive SNAP, but the kids can. Can the adults get ENT training?
Thanks, Nancy, for asking that question. I was watching some of the conversation about that going back and forth. I think non-citizen eligibility for SNAP could be a webinar unto itself. It is a complicated policy area. In terms of the topic for this webinar, employment and training, you do need to be receiving SNAP benefits. You do need to be eligible for SNAP in order to receive SNAP-funded employment and training services. So unless someone is receiving SNAP benefits and eligible for SNAP benefits, they cannot receive SNAP employment and training services, if that helps clarify that issue.
Thank you. This next question is specific to the state of Connecticut. Is there a resource for the state of Connecticut which provides information regarding all of the employment programs which already exist? And that might be a question that obviously applies to different states. So if you can answer that to the best of your ability, that'd be great.
Sure. On the SNAP ENT Resource Center that, this is Jackie, that I mentioned during my portion of the presentation, you can find some of the specific state resources. So we have them for all of our states, Connecticut included. Some states have a website dedicated to their SNAP employment and training programs, and other states will just have general workforce programs listed where you can get additional information.
Thank you. I believe this next question is for Josh. What processes did the Ohio group use to determine groups for outreach to combine the food expertise with the work training expertise?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. To kind of rephrase the question, I think what you're asking is, kind of what did it take when we realized that we needed to partner with people that, had an expertise in workforce development? How did we go about reaching out to those people and, becoming partners and drawing them in? To be honest, I mean, we just started with the people that we already worked with. There was an organization called COIC, Central Ohio Workforce Investment Group, or Investment Corporation, and they were able to connect us with a lot of other people. So we invested a lot in a couple very key relationships. We identified the couple key players, and then through cultivating those relationships, we kind of spread our network out and started hitting some of the smaller organizations. So definitely start big to small, and I'd say start with people that you know and work with already. That's a good way to do it.
Thanks, Josh. I think this next one is for you as well, and it says that you did a great job at your presentation and that this person is in Washington, D.C., and they're looking to revamp their nutrition education program. Do you have a resource for creating a comprehensive survey for program participants?
Resource for creating a comprehensive survey. So I guess I assume what they're asking is, how do you, what kind of tools and resources are there to do a survey, to kind of run a survey with your clients? To be honest, actually, we used Google Forms, which is part of the Google Docs, Google Drive network. So what you can do on there, it's kind of like SurveyMonkey. You can create your own reports, create your own surveys so that people can kind of go through and fill out questions. Now, what I did in surveying our population was physically call the phone numbers of about 1,500 clients. So it took me about 3 weeks. And kind of filled out the survey for them, just asking them questions over the phone. But there's a lot of different ways. You can, if you get your whole cohort together, you can have them fill out the survey in person. And definitely, you don't want to make your survey too long because people are already kind of, time is a big issue with our clients. So we wanted to make it easy for them. But yeah, definitely recommend Google Forms as a good tool for that.
Great, thank you, and that's great because I know that's a free resource, so that'll be great for a lot of our organizations out there. This next question, I believe, goes back to Jackie. When we are specifically looking at initiatives that deal with the ages 50-plus population, are there any variances allowed for ENT with regard to advanced age, say those that are 65 or older?
Okay, I think that question is regarding the requirements for the 50-plus population. So the population between the ages of 16 and 59 is subject to work requirements, and there are exemptions within that population. So if you're between the ages of 16 and 59, but you are in school at least half-time, or if you are responsible for a small child under the age of 6, or an incapacitated person, if you are already working for 30 or more hours per week. And the federal exemptions are laid out and explained in the ENT toolkit. I recommend, if you want to understand the population subject to work requirements, checking that out. But that population between the ages of 50 and 59 is subject to SNAP work requirements and could be required to participate in an employment and training program. I think many states do not require participation from individuals over a certain point because many are focused on able-bodied adults without dependents. ABODs, or otherwise known as ABODs, fall between the ages of 18 and 49. So I don't want to get too technical here, but in general, the 50-plus population is not a target population for staff employment and training programs. So there are certainly resources out there or programs that do serve individuals over the age of 50, and that would really vary by state and even within states.
Okay, thank you. I don't go anywhere. I have another one for you, Jackie. And this one is another sort of clarification question. And do you deal with handicapped individuals by giving them training for employment? Are they included in this program?
All right, so anyone with a physical or mental disability would be exempt from mandatory participation in employment and training. They cannot be required to participate in employment and training. They're considered exempt from the program requirement.
Okay, thank you. And one more, is SNAP ENT a federal requirement?
Right, so that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. The federal statute does have work requirements, which includes employment and training participation if assigned by a state agency. So while everybody who's not exempt must register for work, accept a bona fide offer of employment, not voluntarily reduce work hours or quit, they're only required to participate in employment and training if referred by a state agency.
Great, thank you. I don't have any more questions. So Mark, if you want to resume control.
Sure thing. Those were some really great questions. I think I actually learned quite a bit myself. So now you should see an evaluation on the left side of your screen. Please take the time to answer the questions in the poll, so we'll be able to use those to be able to improve these webinars, and your input really helps us in doing that. And while you're completing the evaluation, we'd like to let you know about our next webinar.
Okie dokie. So we are hosting a Vista App and Performance Measures webinar on Wednesday, September 24th. This is going to be a great opportunity for members to learn about the Vista App, which was recently launched and will help Vistas track their reporting information throughout the course of their year. So we look forward to seeing everyone there.